So we're now going to demonstrate the circle demo. Again, we have the usual imports, but we've also added a couple of things that we haven't seen before. We're going to import java.scene.shape.circle and also java.scene.paint.color. And I believe we've seen the pane before and the scene and the application, so those are all old. And stage, of course. So two new imports here that we haven't seen before. From now on, when I'm doing these demos, I think I'm going to call everything just a demo project, and I'll keep editing and adding to it to make life simple. But don't let that worry you. This is indeed the show circle demo that we're looking at here. Okay, so let's take a look at what happens in this. Well, as usual, what we're doing is always going to extend the application class, and we're always going to override the start method. So that's what we're always going to see in all these demos. Since there's so much common code between the demos, I will little by little start talking less and less about the things that are repetitious. So this is probably the last time I'll mention the fact that we're doing these things. We're going to see it over and over again. We'll also see this stuff at the bottom which we won't necessarily need, so I'll begin to cut that out ahead of time so it's not cluttering our example when we look at it. Also, the stuff you see at the bottom tends to be pretty repetitious too. Just before we're ready to show the stage, we always give it a title, an appropriate title, in this case show circle. And then we always put the scene inside of the stage this way, and then ultimately we show the stage this way. So again, as we go through these demos, I'll start talking less and less about those repeated parts and focusing more on what the differences are. We may not always be dropping a pane in the scene, so I may be very explicit demo to demo, showing what it is we exactly put in the scene. In this case, we put a pane in the scene, and the pane is then described up here. So let's talk about how the pane gets constructed. Well, first of all, we're going to create ourselves a circle. So we instantiate an object called lowercase circle from uppercase class circle. We make an empty circle, and then we set its coordinates. There is a set center x method for circles that tell where the x coordinate of the center of the circle is going to be, in this case 100. And we do the same thing for the y value, also at 100. Now, before we do anything else, let's skip down to here where we've indicated how big the scene is going to be, because that in turn is going to determine the size of the stage. Well, we've set the scene size to 200 pixels by 200 pixels. We're putting the circle centered at 100, 100. So obviously in a stage or in a pane of size 200 by 200, the coordinates 100, 100 would be right at the very center of that pane. So in other words, we're putting our circle in the middle of the pane. Now, how big are we going to make the circle? Well, there is a set radius method for the circle. And of course, you know that this is not the circle that we've been playing with so far that we designed earlier. This instead is a circle that's defined, a circle class that's defined in JavaFX for us to use, because it's a very popular thing to want to use when you're making GUIs up. So there's a set radius, and we set it to 50. If we set the radius to 50 and it's located at 100, 100, then obviously the edge of the circle is going to be halfway between the center and the border all the way around. There's a set stroke method that determines the color of the outline of the circle. In this case, we're making it black. And then there's a set fill method here, which determines what the interior of the circle is going to be colored. And in this case, we've picked color.white. So these are constants defined in the color class. And because they're static constants, we're able to refer to them just by using the class name and a dot and the particular data member name, black. Now that we have a circle, we're going to make a pane to put it in, and then we're going to add it to the pane. So we create the pane by saying capital pane, which is the class name, lowercase pane, which is a name that we've chosen to describe the pane, and then new pane. And you can see we've called the noarg constructor here, so we made an empty pane. And then we use the getChildren method to add something to it. In this case, we're adding a circle. So remember, getChildren returns the observable list from pane, and then the dot add allows us to add a child to that observable list at the end, and we're adding a child which is a circle. And that's basically everything we need to do, and we can go ahead and run this demo. So let's do that now. So I'm going to click on run and go ahead and run it, and there we go. We have our circle exactly as promised. Black outline, white fill, located in the middle of a 200 by 200 pixel window, therefore located at 100, 100 as promised, and the radius is 50. So if this is 100, 100 where the cursor tip is, then if you go over 50 units you hit this, another 50 you hit this, 100 total. So the radius is indeed 50 as we promised it should be. And that's it for our circle demo. Now before we leave this demo, there's two additional things I would like to do for you. First of all, let's go up to the place where we added the circle to the pane. We created the pane using the NOARC constructor here, and that required then that we use the getChildren method to produce the observable list that goes with pane, and then the add method to in turn add a node to that list. What I'd like to show you is that in fact what we can do as an alternative to this is we can add our circle directly at the point in time where we call the constructor, and to do that all we have to do is put the name of the object that we wish to put into the pane right here, and then it won't be necessary to do the code that you see down here. So let's just run it that way to confirm for you that it still works just fine. So I'm going to run it, and sure enough we get the exact same output, just illustrating that there's a couple of ways we could do this. The other final thing I'd like to do before we leave this is, and I guess I shouldn't have closed that because I could have used that figure, so let me open that back up for you. And I'd like to show you what happens when we resize this window. So as you can see, the circle stays at its original coordinates, which are 100, 100 regardless of the window. The fact that we made the window 200 by 200 in the demo and then put the circle at 100, 100 kind of implies that our intent was to put it in the middle of the window. And that being the case, if the window is resized, it would be nice if it could somehow follow along and stay centered within that window regardless of how big or small I make it. We haven't addressed that yet because that's going to be the topic for the next part of the lecture.